Update. My best friend, female 26, slept with my cheating ex, male 28, and tried to hide it. Original post. I feel like I'm in some kind of sick joke. I don't even know how to process this. The two people I trusted the most completely betrayed me, and one of them is standing here acting like I should be happy for her. For context, my ex and I broke up a year ago after I found out he had been cheating on me for months. And not just with one girl, he had a whole rotation. When I finally dumped his lying ass, I was shattered, but at least I had my best friend Emily. She was furious at him, called him a narcissist a-hole, swore I should never even look at his direction again. She was the one who told me I deserved so much better. Fast forward to last week, Emily started acting off, distant, canceling plans, taking forever to text back, and when she did, she was dry. I figured maybe she was stressed or dating someone new, but something in my gut told me she was hiding something. Then a mutual friend casually mentioned seeing her at a bar with my ex. Just the two of them. My stomach dropped. I texted Emily immediately, "Were you with my ex the other night?" It took her hours to reply. Then she hit me with, "Yeah, I ran into him. It was totally random. We just caught up for a sec." BS. At this point, I knew something was up, so I decided to do some digging. And that's when I found out the real story, and not from Emily, but from someone else. Apparently, she had been seeing him for weeks. It wasn't some random run-in. She had been sneaking around, sleeping with the same guy who destroyed me, while pretending to be my best friend. I was shaking with rage when I confronted her. I didn't even give her time to weasel her way out of it. I just looked her in the eye and said, "How long have you been sleeping with my ex?" Her face went pale. At first, she tried to fake innocence act. "What are you talking about?" So I told her everything I knew. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish, then finally sighed and said, "I was going to tell you." "Oh, you were going to tell me? When? After the honeymoon phase? After you got engaged? Or maybe when you needed a bridesmaid?" Then she hit me with, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but he's really changed." I almost laughed. Changed? The same guy who lied to my face every day for months? The same guy who swore he was faithful while texting other girls in my bed? That guy changed? I asked her if she actually gave a damn about me, about how she held me while I cried over him, about how she ranted about how disgusting he was, how she swore he'd never forgive him either. And you know what she said? "I do, but people make mistakes." At that point, I couldn't even look at her. I walked out. And now, she's blowing up my phone, apologizing, saying she never meant to hurt me, that she didn't plan for this to happen, that love is complicated. No, lust is complicated. Betrayal is complicated. This is just disgusting. I don't think I can ever look at her the same way again, but we've been friends since we were in preschool. This hurts so much, I don't know how I can go on, or if I can even forgive her. How do I get the picture of them out of my mind? Now for the top advice before reading the update. Obviously, she isn't your friend, but I'll cheat on her so she'll lose both of you. And that's karma. Just make sure to get the word out so she can't spread a false narrative. Some of my friends think I'm too harsh and controlling who she dates when I tried venting to them, and think I shouldn't end a friendship over this. Those friends are wrong, and I'd watch them carefully for the same type of behavior. I posted on this thread 2 years ago, where my ex-best friend of 20 years slept with my ex-boyfriend who was verbally abusive, multiple times at that. The reason I did so was because all of our mutual friends, and I mean all, were taking their side. But I knew deep down what they did was awful, not loving in any way. A betrayal that no one in their mid-20s should be able to do. I confronted her in a much kinder way than you, lol. Hoped that we could build trust back. She apologized deeply and said everything will be better. Lies. What was I expecting? As expected by everyone else but me, the friend still took her side, and I was left without the group I've known for years. Anyways, I bring this up because my life is so much better now. She was a horrible friend, and now I see it clear as day. I have friends who, though I haven't known them 20 years, there will be a day I can say that and know how deeply I love them, and they love me. I know you're fearing a loss you invested so much time in, but I promise you there is a much, much greener pasture on the other side, and it's all yours. Please take the plunge, lose those evil people, and cut ties with anyone who supports her decision to betray you in any way. They're not good people either. I'm so sorry that happened. This helped me, though, thank you. Honestly, as odd as it is, I'm glad it happened. The friend group was such low quality, and I was blind to it. I'm happy you didn't waste another 20 years on those people. Hysterical that the way I left was because of the one person I trusted most. The world works in mysterious ways that all you really had to do is laugh. You may not know it now, but there are people who are meant to be in your life in your mid-20s that are much better for you. Ones that you can't invest in if you stay so close to someone who happily betrays you in this way. Your friend did make a mistake. She was actively hiding something that she was actively doing multiple times. Please do not let that knowledge go for some sunk cost fallacy. If you feel lonely, please message me and you can rant all you want. What they did was horrible, and no one should be able to invalidate your feelings. I didn't look back, and I don't regret it at all. Good luck! Now for the update. I wasn't really planning on posting an update, but things have gotten even messier, and I needed to vent. After I cut Emily off, I thought that was it. I made it clear that I didn't want anything to do with her, but apparently she's been telling people her own version of what happened, and now some of our mutual friends are turning against me. At first she kept texting me, apologizing and saying she never meant to hurt me. I ignored it. Then she switched tactics and started making it seem like I'm the one overreacting. She's been telling people that I'm trying to ruin her happiness, that I'm mad for no reason because it's not like I was still with him, and that I should just accept that they have a connection. Now, some of our friends are acting weird around me. A few have even said they think I'm being too harsh, and that she didn't cheat on me, so why does it matter? One even told me I don't own my ex. They even had the audacity to show me Emily's Instagram story of them both. I never said I owed either of them, but it's like they're both shoving it in my face now the cat's out of the bag. And they have no shame. Never in my wildest dreams or nightmares did I see my best friend, who saw firsthand how much she hurt me, would turn around and start dating him. And now publicly. I still have a few friends on my side, but it's frustrating that I'm now being seen as bitter or dramatic for cutting her off. It's not about wanting him back. It's about trust. And at this point, I don't even recognize Emily anymore. I don't regret my decision, but now I'm losing even more people than just her, and it's not even my fault. It makes me feel like I'm going crazy, like I was the one who did something wrong. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad's mistress I don't care about their possible deaths? My parents' marriage ended just over a year ago after my mom learned my dad was having an affair. My dad and his mistress have been together for about 6 years by then, and I think he wanted my mom to find out. Since my older siblings had already moved out, and I, 18 female, was almost grown, he wasn't as concerned about hiding it anymore. To me and my siblings, it seemed like he hated my mom, and from the way he spoke, it felt like he resented her for ever being happy with him. We all cut him off when we found out. He tried to fight it, telling us he still loved us, that he was still our dad, and that he still wanted the best for us. But none of us wanted the best for him. My brother told him he hoped the rest of his life would be miserable. Weeks after my mom filed for divorce, my dad texted me and my siblings to tell us that his mistress was pregnant. He even sent us a sonogram photo, but none of us cared enough to reconnect with him or keep him in our lives. I still live at home with my mom while attending community college. My siblings visit, but they live out of state now. A couple of weeks ago, my dad's mistress showed up at the coffee shop where I worked and tried to talk to me. I stayed professional and told her that personal conversations were not allowed at work. She left but came back when my shift was ending, trying to talk to me again as I walked home. I told her I had nothing to say to her. She wanted me to look at and meet her baby, but I walked away before she could take the baby out of the stroller. She showed up again a few days later, this time without the baby. She told me to think about how short life is and how my dad could die tomorrow, implying that I would regret cutting him out of my life. I told her I didn't care if either of them died. I told her they were sick and twisted, and I was letting him go. I said I didn't care about him, her, or their baby. I also warned her that if she wanted to protect her child from the truth, she had better keep them away from me and my siblings, because we wanted nothing to do with them and wouldn't pretend otherwise just to make them happy. I then told her to leave me alone, or I would go to the police for harassment. Later that day, I received a DM from a random account calling me heartless for not caring whether my dad or his mistress died. Since she was the only person I said that to, I deleted the message and moved on. But she also told my dad's family, and now some of them are saying I should still care about my dad and the baby because they are family. Another relative said the mistress had done nothing wrong to me or my family, and that she owed my mom nothing. I brushed off what they said, but it made me wonder, was I wrong to say I didn't care? Either way, I won't apologize. I'll just ignore them if she or my dad tries again in the future. Am I the a-hole? Actions have consequences. Your father's wife was cruel to stalk you, and she set herself up for a conversation she wouldn't like. Maybe things will change in the future, or maybe they won't, but not the a-hole. My feelings about not having a relationship definitely won't change. I've lost all respect for him, and I really don't care about her or their child. Blood doesn't mean as much to me as it does to some people. Even though the baby didn't do anything wrong, I see them as just another random baby in the world, not family, and not someone I desperately want a relationship with. The mistress did nothing wrong? She owed your mom nothing? Is that relative out of their freaking mind? She spread her legs to a married man and he went right along with it. Your sperm donor, aka dad, was sleeping with another woman for 6 years, not caring about the wife and kids he already had. His filth, and for his family to come after you? It's obvious they're okay with him cheating you, your mom, and taking a dump on his own family. They're enablers. Blood isn't family. If you want nothing more to do with them, block them, contact the police and a lawyer, and then file a restraining order if the harassment continues. When a person cheats on their spouse, they also cheat on their family and their kids. They don't care about their own children. Too bad the courts don't take away parental rights permanently from people like that. The relative said the mistress wasn't married to mom or a part of our family then, and owed us nothing. That only my dad did. I don't see it that way though. She expected us to be a family once she and dad were together officially, and that was never going to happen. I think it's sick she expected it. A lot of people say cheating doesn't make someone a bad parent, just a bad spouse, that it shouldn't mean losing custody and stuff. I don't think anywhere in the US allows it now. But cheating destroys the family and creates conflict unless you expect people to be doormats who can't get angry at a cheating spouse or partner once they have children together. It's unrealistic and doesn't make sense to me. Last story. My coworker broke up with her boyfriend and it is because of my husband and I. As the title says, my coworker broke up with her boyfriend of many years because of my husband and me. Despite how it sounds, this is a positive story and something I didn't even realize was happening. For some context, my husband and I work at the same company, though we're in slightly different departments. We have the same shift and normally get to take lunch together and interact frequently throughout the day. We always maintain work-appropriate behavior with each other while on the clock, though if it is low, we will occasionally have more friendly interactions. My coworker, I'll call her Mel, started working with us almost a year ago. She's very sweet, but seemed very shy and sensitive. Initially, our department worried she wouldn't work out because it was incredibly difficult to give her corrections. Even saying something like, "Oh, you wouldn't know this, but this client will always request this incorrectly, and what they really need is this process," would make her excuse herself to the bathroom because she'd start to cry. I now know this should have been a red flag, but the only relationship abuse I'd seen personally had been physical. And while that could have been happening too, I never met her boyfriend and never saw any bruises. About 2 months ago, she told us she had moved, and though I didn't pry, I could hear in her conversation that she wasn't including her boyfriend in the process. I stayed quiet, though I had my suspicions, and watched her come out of her shell. She was smiling more. She became less sensitive and seemed overall much happier. I didn't ask or question it, but simply enjoyed working with her in a better overall mood. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a lull at work and she started opening up to me. Mal confirmed that she had left her boyfriend and that it had been a long time coming. But she said that my husband and I were the reason she finally realized her relationship wasn't healthy and that she deserved better. Mal told me that she watched how we behaved with each other and initially just thought we were a unique couple with a strange personality. But she noticed that we never yell, even when we disagreed, and that we worked together to find solutions. And it wasn't just us. Our other coworkers had similar reactions when mistakes came up or disagreements happened. No one screamed or called each other stupid. We searched for solutions and expressed concerns, and no one cried. She also told me she had been afraid to see us drink alcohol because she was worried we'd turn into lunatics. This was at a department outing for a birthday where we all had one drink. Obviously, no one became belligerent, and she seemed very unsettled by this. Again, no one asked questions because it wasn't our business, but we assumed she had a bad history with alcohol, which turned out to be true. She told me that on multiple occasions, she had to search for her partner at 3 a.m. because he was drunk somewhere. He would berate her on the phone and also on a car ride back home. For so long, she worked from home. She didn't know what normal human reactions were supposed to look like. She was very grateful to have watched my husband and me interact, to see how we never talked poorly about each other and only shared healthy expressions of love. It helped her recognize that she deserved better. I was very flattered and humbled to hear that my indirect actions have helped her search for something better for herself. I wasn't even aware that my husband and I had that level of effect on my coworkers. Now for the comments. That's absolutely wonderful. But I'd say she broke up with her crappy boyfriend because of her. She previously didn't know any better and thought her abusive relationship was normal. When she found out it wasn't, she took the initiative to act on it. She deserves insane credit for this, and I hope you tell her so. An awful lot of people in her situation won't demand better and won't make the change. She deserves a lot of credit for her actions. Absolutely. I didn't include our specific words in the post, but I did tell her I was proud she put herself first and took care of her own health. As a mid-50s man happily married for 28 years, I'm not surprised. I tend to find that people in the 25 to 40 range are often immature when it comes to real-life relationships. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because they are between the previous generation, which didn't have online relationships, and Gen Z, which has fully embraced an online presence. They still rely on the old code, but they live under new rules and expectations. They often tend to be either absolutist or completely clueless. I had a 28-year-old male employee crying because he had been ghosted by his online girlfriend of 3 years. 3 years. Never met her in real life. And he locked himself away to cry for hours. I also had a 26-year-old female employee who desperately wanted to get married but couldn't get her relationships to last more than 3 months. She was so focused on marriage that she neglected her relationships and came across as desperate. Many people are influenced by social media and don't realize they have unrealistic expectations. They don't even see that this makes them toxic. My wife is a couples therapist, and we were invited to the wedding of a friend's daughter. Some of the bride's friends heard about my wife's profession and came to ask her questions. One of the bridesmaids wanted a £100,000 wedding, and her fiancé had refused to finance that extravagance. Her friends egged her on, saying she deserved to have her dream wedding. She wanted to give him an ultimatum. Either he gave in to her demand or they were through. My wife had the audacity to say that as soon as she gave the ultimatum, the relationship would be over or doomed. She could not understand why that was a bad idea. Update. I'm tired of my ex-husband's wife wanting to be my friend just because he cheated on us both. Original post. I don't understand why I'm in this situation, and honestly, I'm frustrated because even my own family tells me I'm the bad one here. I just need to vent. I don't need advice or people saying, do this, you should tell her this, or I would write her this. Over 17 years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me with a woman I didn't know, but she knew who I was. He left me for her when our only daughter was a baby, and I just moved on with my life. I wasn't going to fight for a man who made immature decisions without thinking of the consequences. He married that woman and I've focused on having a healthy co-parenting relationship for my daughter. He never showed any remorse, even telling me that our relationship was a mistake and that the other woman was the love of his life. That helped me see he's not someone I want or need in my life. Now he's cheated on her, and for some reason, this woman, who's always had a cold, distant relationship with me, is trying to talk to me every day. I found out about his infidelity through my daughter, who wasn't affected by it, so I didn't give it much thought. My only concern was whether he'd still be able to have our daughter over on the weekends like usual. But his wife has started sending me messages explaining what happened, even though I never asked her. In the past, I only reached out to her if he didn't answer a question about our daughter. It's obvious she needs someone to talk to, but even when I respond briefly, she keeps sending me long voice messages about it. I get that she's going through something, but why come to me? I don't want to be rude, but I really don't care about how she or he feels. In one of her messages, she said, "You know how I feel now." And yes, maybe I do, but that was 17 years ago. It's not the same. To be completely honest, she can't compare her situation to mine at all. I was a new mom when my husband told me he'd been cheating because I was boring in bed and didn't appreciate him. She, on the other hand, knew he was unfaithful when she married him, so it's not quite the same situation. I've tried ignoring her, but when I bring it up with my family or friends, almost all of them say things like, "Oh, but she must feel lonely. She wasn't to blame for being the other woman. You should be more empathetic." Or my favorite, "She needs someone to talk to." They're basically telling me it's my responsibility as a feminist to support her. I get that she's not to blame for him being a cheater, but as a full-grown adult, she chose to marry a man she knew had cheated with her while his wife was pregnant. So why should I now feel obligated to be her support system? When she had a choice to do the right thing, she didn't. So why is it suddenly my duty to be her friend? It doesn't make sense, and the women around me keep insisting I should feel empathy for her. She and he knew exactly what they were getting into, and I don't see why I need to be her free therapist. Being cheated on isn't my whole personality, and I don't want to talk about it with her 24/7. I'm just going to keep ignoring her because, frankly, I don't care how she feels, even if that makes me a bad feminist for not empathizing. Edit? No, I can't block her because she still lives with him, and I need to have her contact info in case of an emergency with my daughter. Honestly, it's strange how many people are commenting and messaging me about what I should say to her or even drafting messages for me. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to use words from strangers who don't know me, my feelings, or the full situation. It feels like people are projecting their own issues onto my post. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Personally, I just find your family really weird. Just from the title, the situation seemed so absurd that it made me laugh. You don't owe her anything. Tell her to find a therapist because you don't care. My mother was someone's lover, so she has the mentality of, you can't judge the lives of others. It wasn't her fault to fall in love. So that's kind of the way she and my siblings think. I'd be brutally honest with her, just like you were in the post. You're absolutely right. You can't compare your situation from 17 years ago to hers now. She knew exactly what she was getting into, and now she has to lie in the bed she made. You're not her therapist, and honestly, she shares the blame for sleeping with a married man, knowing his wife was carrying his child. As for your family, I don't even know how to describe it. Your mom justifying her own actions like that? Ew. At one point, I thought about being totally honest, but then I thought that would only bring unnecessary problems if they get back together because it seems like it. I just answer things like, "What a shame," or downcast face with sweat emoji. And she sends me audios of more than 2 minutes that I don't usually listen to because I don't care. Something very similar just happened to me. My abusive ex's new wife had a breakdown and left him, then showed up at my door wanting to hang out. We've always had a polite but distant relationship. Luckily, I was out of town and told her we could hang out when I got back. Truth is, I don't want to hang out with her, and I definitely don't want to rehash all the crap he put me through. I'm in no mood to be back in that space. Plus, there's the whole issue of her putting up with it for so long. She dealt with way more than I did, but my family seems to think that staying together through abuse is somehow an accomplishment. Anyway, I just humored her and kept flaking until she left me alone. That was years ago for me. I'm over it. I don't want to go back, and I don't want to hear about what she went through. I've already heard enough from my kids. My family had the same reaction. They used to say that in the end, my ex and his wife were really soulmates, just because they were together for 17 years. Now for the update 2 weeks later. Hi, it's been a while since I posted, and I just want to give a little update for those who are concerned. First of all, a bit of background. My mother had a long-term affair while I was a teenager and well into my adulthood. Their relationship lasted for years until he died, and I don't think his wife ever found out. That's why my mother tries to manipulate me into not judging my ex's wife, saying things like, no one chooses who they fall in love with. She sees herself in that woman, which is why she's always said that my ex-husband and his lover, now his wife, are soulmates, and that I shouldn't stand in the way. I was very young at the time, and my mother was the only person I could turn to for a bit of support. Narcissists always prey on the vulnerable, and she took full advantage. Now, I have limited contact with her, though my daughter does spend time with my family. As for my friends, and opinions about the other woman vary. Many believe it's misogynistic to judge them because they're single women and it's the man who should be blamed, and we should show solidarity with other women. I usually agree with that perspective, but not in this case. I can feel empathy when the woman didn't know or was a minor being groomed. But here, I have no pity. She knew exactly what she was doing. Women can also choose to be mean and cruel. We're not weak, and my ex's wife is fully accountable for her choices. I know that explanation might be unnecessary, but some people didn't understand my family's or friends' behavior. And honestly, it feels good to vent. So a few days ago, I actually confronted my ex's wife. I'd had an incredibly stressful day, and seeing her messages pop up on WhatsApp pushed me over the edge. I sent her a voice message, telling her I'm not interested in her life or her suffering. I said I'm not her friend, nor do I want to be. She never apologized for her actions, and now she expects me to join her support group for women cheated on by my ex? I let her know that she walked into this with full knowledge of who he was. Knowing he'd already cheated on the mother of his child, she married him anyway, believing she'd be different. I'd love to post that audio here. It was 5 full minutes of catharsis, telling her exactly how I felt. She got upset and we ended up arguing, which was exhausting. I definitely don't want issues to disrupt 17 years of normal co-parenting. I forwarded one of her audios to my ex, after listening to all of them and realizing she hasn't once apologized. Not that I need her apology. She just complained, looking for someone to trash him with or act as her unpaid therapist. I told my ex to tell his wife to back off and find a real therapist. He apologized and said they're both working on their marriage, so she's still dealing with anger and insecurity, obviously. Since I went through the same thing, he said she thought we could share the pain. I told him I'm not her friend, and this affects our co-parenting, so he needs to make sure she respects my boundaries. He reluctantly agreed to talk to her, and for the past 3 days, I haven't received any messages from her, aside from one today letting me know my daughter was sleeping over there. So it seems like it worked. I don't care if they have a happy or miserable marriage, and I don't care if she's happy knowing he cheated but still stays with him. I just want to live in peace, free of drama from people who, at over 40, are still mentally stuck in high school. Karma said, hold my purse. Lol. They'll cheat with you, then on you. Mistress and your mom are so delusional, it's crazy. You should give your ex's wife your mom's number. That's the perfect shoulder for her to cry on, since they can bond as mistresses. Good for you setting boundaries and standing up for yourself. Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my soon-to-be ex-husband why I'd take him back when the nanny does more for the family than he does? My husband and I are separated and getting a divorce. We have a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. He owns his own business and told me he'd be home by 5:30 to 6 every night. I get home around 6 to 6:30, so I didn't think anything of him always being home before me. I had our 3-year-old in extended daycare and our 8-year-old in our school's after-school program thinking he was working. Halfway through last school year, I hired a nanny instead of using the extended care programs. After our oldest had issues with her program. About 2 weeks in, I got a call from the nanny saying my soon-to-be ex had locked them out and told her to take them to the park. The kids were hungry and she didn't have car seats. His house is walking distance from school and daycare, so she had needed them. I called him and he said he'd gotten home early, wanted some space from the kids, and didn't want a random 18-year-old in the house. I had to leave work early to let them in. When I spoke with the nanny, she mentioned she was always home when she got there with the kids and that he was difficult, demanding that she and the kids stay in one of the kids' rooms, ignoring the kids if they try to talk to him, and getting upset if she left the room to grab his snack. That was the last straw for me. I filed for divorce by the end of the following week, and the kids and I moved out by the end of the next month. I ended up letting go of that nanny, and now we have Amina, 24. Amina is a Middle Eastern refugee with 3 kids of her own, ages 2, 4, and 7. Hiring Amina has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I come home every day to a clean house, homework done, and some of the best Arabic food I've ever tasted. I have no idea how she manages it all, but her support allows me to enjoy my time with my kids, instead of scrambling to make dinner, clean up, and get my 8-year-old to do her homework. She handles grocery shopping, keeps track of school events, and even takes care of things like clothes and school supply shopping for the kids. My soon-to-be ex never did any of that. I once left him with the kids for a week while I went on a work trip, and they lived on McDonald's and pizza, which wrecked my 8-year-old's stomach. When I came back, the house was in the worst shape I'd ever seen. Our 2-year-old, at the time, ran out of clean clothes, and he bought her new ones instead of washing the dirty ones. Now he is asking about getting back together, saying it's better for the kids if we're together. I told him he's never truly thought about what's best for the kids. Even when he takes them for the weekend, all he does is bring them to Grandma's house. I asked him why I should go back to him when Amina does more for us than he ever did. He argued that he works to provide for us, as if that's different from me also working. Apparently close to double the hours he worked, and for similar pay. Now his family is calling me a bad mom, saying that if I cared about the kids, I'd want them to have 2 parents. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I personally would marry Amina. Having a neglectful, abusive parent is worse than a single parent. Ask any child psychologist. What you're describing is not laziness. It's straight-out abuse. You can lose your kids if CPS had been called in that last situation. You really need to think about the kids and not what society told us about what's good for the kids. 100%. If he doesn't live there, the kid grows up to believe he loved them, but unfortunately wasn't able to live there and be around to show it. If he's there and kicking them out the house and getting angry when they approach him, they're at risk for developing all sorts of insecurities. He doesn't seem mature enough to be trusted with your children's mental well-being. You do not have to give a reason to anyone for not wanting to reconcile. If they insist, then I found that I am happier, the kids are more stable, and our lives run more smoothly as things are right now. That's it. No one is owed an explanation for your decision, not even the soon-to-be ex. Ex just wants to get back together because I bet he hates paying child support and not being taken care of by OP. Screw him. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my estranged son nor meeting his child? I haven't slept in nearly 2 days, so please excuse any grammar mistakes. I'm from a country where bullying isn't taken seriously. I'm using fake names to protect my other 2 children, who I'll call Eve and Henry. I lost one of my daughters, Rose, 15 years ago due to relentless bullying by a group who never faced any consequences. One of the people responsible was Sarah, who is now married to my son, Mike. Apparently, they met in university, connected, and started a relationship. A former classmate sent a video of them on a date to Eve. When we confronted Mike, he broke down saying Sarah was sorry and gave a million excuses. He even said that Rose made her own decision and that we couldn't blame Sarah. He added that if we tried to make him choose, he would choose Sarah. I told him he didn't need to choose because from that day on, I had 2 dead children and that he should never contact me again. His father and siblings did the same. The only family members who didn't cut him off were his aunt and cousin. Over the years, they tried to reach out with apologies, wedding invitations, and even pictures of their son. I thought Mike understood when he wasn't notified until 2 weeks after his father's funeral. But 2 days ago, he showed up at Henry's workplace to tell him that his wife, Sarah, has terminal cancer and that he needs me because he can't handle it all on his own. Mike then showed up at my house with his son, refusing to leave until I spoke to him. After about 4 hours, I opened the door and told him to leave. Mike tried to force me to meet his child, saying his son was innocent and that Sarah has repented for her role in Rose's bullying, urging me to forgive them. I told him that Sarah's cancerous karma, to which he responded by asking how I could be so cruel, not only to them but to their child. I told him I didn't care about his child or what happens to either of them, and to get off my property before I called Henry to have him removed. His aunt, my sister-in-law, called, saying I'm a selfish, cruel mother who can't let go of the past. She mentioned that Rose wouldn't have held anything against the child. I told her no one was stopping her from helping them, but she made excuses. One being that it wasn't her place, even though it wasn't her place to give Mike my address or Henry's. Am I the a-hole for not helping them? What a deeply painful experience this must have been for you. Losing a child, especially under those circumstances, is an unimaginable hurt. And when a close family member is connected to that loss, the betrayal you feel becomes even more overwhelming. The fact that Mike's life has moved on with Sarah, knowing the pain her actions contributed to, is a lot to take in. You made a choice to protect yourself and your other children from further hurt, especially after how Mike responded when confronted. So, it's understandable why you would hesitate to open the door to that part of your past again, especially without real accountability or meaningful actions to heal the past wounds. Mike may be asking for help, but it doesn't mean you have to forget the impact their choices had on you and your family. It's a deeply personal decision on whether to help Mike or meet his child. But remember, you are allowed to honor what feels safe and healthy for you. How do you feel about holding firm on that boundary? I know helping Mike will cost me losing contact with Eve. They were very close to Rose, and they witnessed some of the bullying.
Update. I, 29 male, caught my wife, 27 female, letting our male neighbor rub lotion on her pregnant stomach. Original post. This literally happened this morning. I'm posting it here and hoping to vent and maybe get some perspective because I've been extremely upset all day and can't process this productively. My wife is 8 months pregnant with our child. We live next to another married couple who are in their late 30s. I don't like the guy. I've found him to be invasive and the weird type of friendly that almost seems to be prying and clingy. I'm not sure if that's clouding my judgment here or if this validated my beliefs about him. I left for work, but decided on the way there that I just wasn't feeling it and called off. I stopped for breakfast before heading home to surprise my wife. 40 minutes tops. I get home, enter from the back door, and there's my wife and my neighbor sitting in our living room on the couch. She's turned toward him, fully clothed, but with her shirt pulled up over her very pregnant stomach, while he, facing her, is rubbing lotion on her stomach with both hands. They both froze before my wife asked how come I was back, and then said neighbor stopped by to borrow the toolbox while I was moisturizing and wanted to know if he could feel the baby, so I said okay. I told him to get out before I put him out, and he left immediately. I tried to stay calm and talk to her and get the whole story. Neighbor's wife is apparently infertile, which is the first time I heard of it, which is amazing considering the guy never shuts up about his personal woes, and that he wanted to feel the baby. That's her story, and she's sticking to it. That's not good enough for me. My thought process is that there's a big freaking difference between feeling a baby for 10 seconds and coming into our home and rubbing lotion on my wife's stomach. If it was some close friend of ours, I might understand. But I dislike the guy, and my wife has never expressed any sort of closeness to him aside from passing pleasantries, and she's not the type to let anyone she isn't close to put their hands on her. So, in the span of a day, the guy goes from being a distant acquaintance of hers at best, to her deciding to invite him in and let him rub her. I also find it convenient that he showed up that early, right after I went to work, very shortly after his own wife also left for work. And he's never came over asking to borrow anything of mine before, yet 9:30-ish in the morning, and he urgently needs a toolbox. I don't believe my wife, and this is the first time my trust in her hasn't been strong enough. I don't believe her story because it makes no sense. When I told her I'd be mentioning this to his wife, she was adamant I don't, as not to make more of it than it is. If it was innocent, what more is there to make? And even if nothing more is going on, I'm not okay with what I just seen. I'm not okay with him rubbing my unborn child in my home without me there. I know it's her body and her choice, but I'm not okay with this. It would be one thing to feel the baby kick, but he was sitting reclined, comfortably on our sofa, rubbing lotion on her, with both leaned into their private conversation. I'm trying really hard to figure out how to express the fact I don't believe her story without causing stress that it'd be dangerous for her or our baby. I don't want to pick a fight with her at this stage of her pregnancy, but at the same time, my mind is spinning and I'm not cool with what happened. Any advice would be appreciated. Now for the top advice before reading the first update. Worst case scenario is she's been cheating with him and it's his baby. Best case, she's naive and really thought having a stranger rub lotion on her stomach right after her husband left for work is okay. Weird, really weird. Edit, definitely tell the neighbor's wife. I'd want to know if I was infertile and my husband was rubbing lotion on another woman's pregnant belly while I was at work. I'm 7 months pregnant and married, and I'm telling you right now, no other man is going to touch my bare belly, especially rub lotion on it. It's too intimate, and I would feel like I'm betraying my husband. Plus, you are right, it's weird, really weird. 15 weeks pregnant here, and same, definitely same. Not pregnant, but a man with a big belly, and I too would think it would be weird if my neighbor's husband rubbed lotion on my belly. You need to find out by the other wife what the husband was repairing with your toolbox. Probably BS. Possibly this isn't in the US, but people usually borrow a specific tool, not a toolbox. This is exactly what jumped out at me. Borrow the toolbox sounds like a very made-up thing by a woman that doesn't mess with tools. No one needs to borrow a toolbox, they have a specific task they need a specific tool for. Toolbox is BS story, but he should divorce her if she's lending his tools behind his back. You never touch a man's tools, that's a cardinal sin. As this is relationship advice, we're obligated to inform you that paternity testing can now be done prenatally. That's right, you can get a paternity test done at as early as 8 weeks gestation, using only blood from your wife. It's called the NIPP, or non-invasive prenatal paternity test. You're welcome. Also, communication, counseling, blah blah blah. Good luck. Only her reaction to a paternity test can tell a lot about what's going on, so I second this comment. Now for the first update. I'm only posting this update due to the amount of support I've gotten, as well as the numerous requests to do so. I didn't expect the response I got, and I've unfortunately seen it referenced on other subs, so I'm choosing to confront it. Most of you were right. Congratulations. I read through all of your replies and spoke to friends and stewed for a day. My wife stuck to her story, apologized for making me uncomfortable, and assured me it wouldn't happen again. The guy even decided to leave a handwritten note in the mailbox specifically apologizing as well. I still didn't feel better, and the consensus was that I should speak to my neighbor's wife, who were going to call Sally, so that's what I did. I watched my neighbor leave for work, then called my mother-in-law to come take my wife for a lunch and a girl's date so she could get out of the house. I left as usual for work, called off again, and went to stay with a friend. Got a text from my wife around noon telling me she was with mother-in-law and would be back by dinner. Went back home and knocked on Sally's door. The guy decided to tell Sally I kicked him out and caused a scene about not wanting either of them speaking to us anymore because I was angry about him helping my wife. Come to find out, both Sally and him have been going over to my house while I was away busy for the past few weeks, as my wife had approached her and asked if they would be willing to lend a hand with chores she could no longer do alone. Sometimes Sally went over and did small tasks, or just hung out, sometimes both, sometimes just the guy. Wife told her I knew and was fine with it, and that's why she was confused when her husband told her his BS about me being mad. She showed me where she texted my wife, has her number not mine, to clarify and ask if she was welcome over, and my wife hasn't replied, and since I don't often see Sally or socialize with them, she just assumed her husband was telling the truth. She also admitted that she noticed her husband and my wife becoming fast friends, and figured it was due to the pregnancy, but thought it was his way of dealing with their own inability to have kids, so she wrote it off. I told her what I walked in on. I told her about the tools, which ended up being BS too. Came to the same conclusions. Both cried. Both hugged for the first time. Both took turns denying and accepting and talking each other down. Took a walk around the block together and conspired. She planned to call her husband at work and say that my wife messaged her, confessing to the two of them having an affair and seeing what happened. Went back to my friends. Started having major panic attacks thinking I messed up, that I was about to ruin my marriage, worrying I might be wrong. A bit later, and I get a call from my wife screaming at me to find a way to leave work and come home. So I go home. The guy called her telling her what Sally told him. She told me I was crazy, I was a piece of trash, that she was considering leaving me, everything. Having a panic attack thinking I just ruined my entire life over nothing, while also trying to calm her down for the baby's sake, I impulsively told her that if she was leaving, I'd still be requesting a DNA test. And that's when it all came down. Entire tone changed, pleading, begging, apologizing, hyperventilating, holding me, asking me how I found out while denying anything happened. I told her it would be okay and asked if she'd talk to me if we went for a drive. She agreed, took us to a parking lot and we talked. Told her if there was any chance of anything happening, she needed to tell me what was happening because I already knew a lot. She had slept with him a handful of times before she was pregnant, and our baby might not be ours. He had been coming by and doing daddy duties once in a blue moon, in case it's his, and said they haven't slept together in months. She said we could move away, that it's ours no matter what, and that he had manipulated her. Admitted she lied to Sally to justify him going over for daddy duties. I asked her if she could stay with mother-in-law for a few days while I calmed down. She agreed, took her home, packed up some stuff and dropped her off. I've cleaned out my essentials and I'm in a friend's basement. Friend called her on my behalf and told her that if the baby is mine, I'll be dealing with it. If it isn't, it's on her, but either way I'll be filing for divorce. My friends took my phone from me and deleted my social media. She's been calling my friends and friends told her to get lost. I spoke to my boss and he's been very understanding. Last I heard from Sally, her husband hadn't been home and stopped responding to her calls and texts. I have nothing left. In less than a week, my life has fallen apart. The only thing keeping me here is the small chance that the baby is mine. I have nothing else. I woke up today disappointed I woke up at all. I've never felt this alone. I haven't accepted any of it yet, and I'm praying for the first time in my life that I can stop feeling this way and find strength. More advice before reading the final update. I have nothing else. Respectfully, sir, I disagree. Here's what you have. I spoke to my boss and he's been very understanding. I don't know where you work, but where I come from, most bosses would tell me to man up and leave that crap at the door. Not everyone has an understanding boss like that man. You've got a treasure, learn to value it. I'm in a friend's basement. Friend called her on my behalf. You've got a great friend who would share his or her home with you just because. I can guarantee you that not everyone is like that. Also, the friend called her on your behalf. Not many friends would want to get involved in that kind of drama. Friend's an absolutely solid person. My friends took my phone from me and deleted my social media. She's been calling my friends. Friends told her to get lost. Now you have a small army. It might be small, but it's certainly made up of loyal elites, of friends to help you through this process. Not everyone can say the same. So bro, you aren't alone. You don't have nothing. You still have your job. A job with an understanding boss. A good friend. Friends who take your side. You have everything a man could ever want. So chin up my guy and go grab that bull by its horns. Life may look like a black hole right now, but it is always darkest right before the dawn. You know what else OP has? The freaking moral high ground. The knowledge that whatever is going on, it's not anything that he did wrong or didn't do. He got screwed over by other people, but can hold his head high. It was incredibly brave of you to confront this, and very kind to let us know. One day at a time, dude, one day at a time. Next up, prenatal paternity test. But wow, I don't see this marriage surviving even if it's yours. Hugs. If you see this OP, focus on yourself going forward. One tiny silver lining is that your wife showed her true colors before you are decades into a family that might not have even been yours. There's lots of grieving to do with all this loss, but know you'll be a better person for having the chance to start a real family with someone who you can trust. Good luck, man. The marriage should not survive. It's toxic. I'm usually all for working things out between a married couple. I hate divorce and think it's the easy, lazy option most of the time. But if your wife is pregnant and doesn't know whose baby it is allowing her husband to get excited, tell his family and friends, get his head wrapped around being a dad, and it's all a lie. Zero chance this woman should be trusted. This isn't small stuff. This is a new life. Now for the final update. Don't know if anyone will remember my original posts, but I'm still getting messages on a regular basis for an update, so this is the final one. Extremely long story made slightly less long. A week after my last update, my soon-to-be ex-wife had our child, which I was at the hospital for, and am the father. The first few weeks after my last update were extremely difficult, with family and friends on both sides adding to the drama. Thankfully, I've had an overwhelming amount of support from not only from the vast majority of people I know in my personal life, but from all of you as well. My wife and I agreed to sit down and discuss things after she was discharged, in my friend's basement and with my friend upstairs in case I needed the support. She came over and we basically said everything we needed to say. I exploded and said a lot of mean things, most of which I regret, some I don't. She spent the whole time apologizing and begging me to take her back and give our family a chance to survive everything that happened. Went on for about an hour like this until I accepted that there was nothing left to say and I have zero romantic love for her anymore, and she accepted that we need to focus on our daughter above all else. We're agreeing to figure out a custody split amicably and to eventually co-parent more actively together when wounds heal. But our marriage is over. She has the potential to be a wonderful mother, but she failed me as a wife, and my sole focus right now is how to get myself mentally to where I need to be the best father possible. We plan to eventually sell the home, but right now I'm staying in an apartment. Sally is leaving her husband too. He's apparently staying with his mother and still refused to speak to Sally directly. According to her, the last thing that was passed along to her is that he understands what he did. He's sorry he hurt her, he loves her, and won't contest a divorce. She's struggling to handle everything and lacks a support system, so we're developing a friendship. Mostly two wounded people leaning on each other, and I'm doing my best. She plans to start therapy too. And no, I don't plan to be anything more than platonic friends with Sally. Lovely woman, but no. I still haven't fully processed my new role as a parent. I think mentally I already convinced myself my child wouldn't be mine in case it ended up that way. I plan to take classes and spend more time with my daughter doing early bonding. I'm terrified but very happy. I know there's a lot left to do and a lot of hurting left to go through. But I'm stable and a dad. That's what matters most. There's something about the audacity of cheaters parading their affair partners in front of their spouses or partners that is so much more anger-inducing than your usually clandestine affair. I'm not sure why. My brother's soon-to-be ex-wife had an affair with a guy who was my brother's then best friend. 1. Apparently she'd always had a crush on a affair partner. Then why date my brother, marry him, and have kids with him? 2. Evil sister-in-law and affair partner conducted much of this affair at my brother's and hers at the time apartment, under the lie that she was taking care of affair partner after he had a procedure done, and while affair partner's wife was at work. Plus, there's the horrifying nature of them to conduct it in a small apartment that always had my young nieces present. 3. Extra creepy detail. Evil sister-in-law was the maid of honor for affair partner's wife in their wedding, only a few months before crazy sister-in-law admitted to the affair. Oh, and affair partner's wife was the maid of honor at my brother and evil sister-in-law's wedding as well. Bonkers. 4. Evil sister-in-law soon got pregnant with affair partner's kid and now lives with him and his wife and their combined 3 children. I actually don't feel bad for affair partner's wife because she apparently only became close friends again with ex-sister-in-law for free childcare. I kinda think she was aware of the whole affair and approved of it. I think they might be polygamous, but lacking any sense of healthy boundaries or care for other people. It's an infuriating situation that almost ended my brother. He didn't sleep for over a month. I constantly worried that he'd die in a car crash or workplace accident. My poor nieces, years on, don't always cope well with the implosion of their birth family. Divorce has dragged on for 2.5 years. There are other bonkers details, but I'm running on. Anyway, it took a long time to not want to scream at her when I saw her. I still get that impulse sometimes. Dear potential cheaters, can you at least avoid your spouse's siblings, parents, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and so on? Love the people who have to pick up the pieces in the wake of deceitfulness and betrayal. My cousin ended himself when he found out his wife and lifelong best friend had been having an affair almost their entire marriage. I still wonder if their 2 kids are his, but I don't speak to that side of the family. They'd lie anyway. What a mess. I'm glad OP stood his ground. Boundaries are important, and so is respect. I almost wished it wasn't his child so he can get a clean break. Must have been very difficult to still proceed with the divorce knowing you have a newborn to raise together. Same here. It's almost unfair for OP. On the flip side though, neighbor has been technically rubbing OP's child in his ex-wife's belly all this time. Creepy in hindsight. I purposefully ruined my cousin and ex's wedding, and it's brought me a lot of happiness. Plus updates. Original post. I once looked up to my cousin. I thought he was a great guy, and we were close like brothers. I was also dating a girl. I was deeply in love with her, and planned to marry her someday. I thought my life was perfect. One day I came home early because a colleague offered to cover my shift. I was pretty tired so I accepted and went home. Arriving home, I found them in my bed, getting it on. Both of them were shocked to say the least. I told them I wanted them to be gone by the time I got back, and left the house. They were gone by the time I did get back, but she left me a note telling me she was sorry, and to call her when I'd calmed down. I didn't call her. I texted her saying that I'd gather her things and drop them off at cousin's in a few days, and that she's staying with him now, not me. I followed through with that. It took about a week to transfer everything. Both of them tried to apologize, but I didn't have anything nice to say to them, so I said nothing. I just knocked the door and handed the bags to whoever answered before leaving. My cousin called me multiple times to try to apologize, but I refused to accept it. 3 years have passed since then. I went no contact with them. I didn't bring it up to the rest of my family or any of their friends. I'm not sure why, I just didn't. Then I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered. It was my cousin. He sounded really happy and was acting like he hadn't destroyed my life. He explained he and my ex were getting married, and he wanted me to be his best man. I was so angry that he had the utter gall to act like nothing was wrong, and lost my temper. I yelled at him and called him names before hanging up. He sent me a text telling me the offer still stood, and if I didn't want to be his best man, then he just simply would not have won. A few days passed by and I had an idea. I texted him back and apologized. I sent a paragraph of BS saying I was still angry, but this could be an opportunity for the three of us to heal and move past it. He was overjoyed and said he'd pay for everything, and he'd help me pick out a suit if I wanted, which I accepted because I sure as heck wasn't going to spend any money on his stupid wedding if I could help it. The wedding day came. I had spent the week prior writing a speech, putting all the negative feelings that had bottled up over the years into words. The wedding was pretty good. I'm sure one of them has some nice well-paying job or something, because they must have spent a decent bit of money on this wedding from how nice it was. Our entire family was there, as was a decent chunk of my ex's family. Eventually the time for my speech came. I just remember feeling really nervous as it built up to it, and my voice kept faltering when I was reading it out, but I didn't and still don't care. At least I got it out. I explained what these two horrible people had done to me. I called them the worst names I could think of, and wished them the worst. Then I left. I was expecting some kind of dramatic moment from all the guests, gasps of shock and all that, but there was none of that. Everyone was silent. On my way home, I got a call from my mother angrily telling me that I'd ruined the wedding, and both of them were so upset, and she asked me why I would do this. I told her that they deserved it for what they'd done to me, and everything I said in this speech was true. She kept defending them, so I swore at her and hung up. Since then, I've gotten several calls and texts from others in mine and my ex's family, angry that I ruined the wedding. I've also received a few texts from people who were there being supportive and telling me they were there if I needed to talk. I'm not sure if I feel better having done this, but it did bring me great catharsis when people were telling me the wedding was ruined. At least now they've felt at the very least a fraction of what they've made me feel. Just a little edit to address some common questions. As far as I'm aware, the rest of the family wasn't aware of her cheating on me. They likely knew we were dating at some point, then we weren't. I've learned from previous incidents that I can't rely on my family for any kind of support, so I've been on low contact with them since I moved out of my parents' house, which is why I didn't mention this to anyone in my family. A lot of people are also asking for the speech transcript. I wrote it in a Google Doc and read it out from my phone. The delivery was kinda lackluster. I sounded like I was going to cry and tripped over my words, but I managed to read it all out. It isn't verbatim what I said, but it's very close as I was reading from this as a general script. Hello everyone. I'm not very good at public speaking, so apologies in advance. It's an honor to be at this wedding, and an even greater honor to be the best man. I was shocked that I was even invited at all, since the last time I'd spoken to the bride and groom was when I'd found them doing it in my own bed. X was my partner at the time, you see, but I don't think she got the memo that when you're dating someone, you don't sleep with their cousin in your partner's own bed. And it wasn't like cousin didn't know we were dating either. Who knows how long this slimy douche was screwing her behind my back. Weeks, months. For those unaware, X and I had been dating for 2 years. I loved her with all my heart and was actually saving up to get a proposal ring. Maybe if X wasn't such a loose woman, cousin would be giving this speech instead, and I wouldn't have been struggling with mental health for 3 years. Anyway, I've heard 50% of marriages end in divorce, and I hope yours is a messy one. From the bottom of my heart, screw you both. You ruined my life, and I will never forgive either of you. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Lol, that's savage. Honestly, what did they expect you to do? Except the fact that he stabbed that knife in your back, and basically causes you so much anguish and hurt. I'm amazed they were stupid enough to invite you. Not just invite him, ask him to be best man. Like when I read the title and started reading, I thought the cousin was marrying some other girl, not OP's ex. I'm happy you ruined their wedding, lol. I got mad reading this. I'm almost impressed at the gall they have to do something so unbelievably awful, evil and callous. Like they didn't even give a crap. They wanted to rub his face in it, gloat about it, and show it off. Normally I wouldn't condone this type of petty revenge, but in this case, I am 100% for it. Screw them, and while you're at it, screw all the family members who are defending them. Go no contact with every single one of them, if not for the fact that they are defending your horrible cousin and your ex. Go no contact with them for the fact that they saw you were with your ex, saw that you suddenly weren't with her, and then couldn't be bothered to ask for details and at least check up on you to see how you're doing. That literally takes only a few minutes, very simple text message or anything. If they had done that at least, then they would have known what she did to you. But they couldn't even bother to do that because they didn't care enough. Screw them all. It's the fact that your cousin had the audacity to ask you to be the best man at his wedding with your ex that cheated on you with him. He's a complete idiot, if nothing else. You don't go from not speaking to each other for years after a conflict or betrayal to asking the person you hurt to be the best man at your wedding. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. They deserve what they got for hurting you, and then inviting you to their wedding to hurt you even more. The only way this gets worse is if they asked him to be the marriage officiant or something. Be prepared to turn them down when they ask you to be the godfather to their kid or some crap lol. You sir deserve a drink. Hats off to you. I made sure to help myself to as many drinks as I could before we sat down for the speech. I think the alcohol gave me enough courage to do that in front of my entire family and hers. Now for the first update. Hey, it's been a while, and a lot has happened. I haven't logged into this account other than to look at any messages I've gotten whenever I see the notification in my email. It has helped, and it's good to know that people still think about me all this time later after reading words on a screen. Heck, the most recent private message I got was 4 hours ago as of typing this, and the most recent notification on my post was 10 minutes ago. I haven't responded to any because I don't really know how to begin doing so. I'd feel bad just giving a short thank you, and I'm not really creative enough to come up with over 20 good responses. I do greatly appreciate the supportive words though. Some stuff has happened since the whole mess that was my cousin's wedding. My mom tried to talk to me, said she saw the post I had made. I pushed her away for a few days before finally speaking to her. I'm struggling to find words to describe how things worked out between us. The easiest way to explain it is that we agreed to disagree on whether what I'd done was correct. I got a mix of messages from those who were present at the wedding, some supportive, while some telling me off. I was struggling a lot. I've just gone back to simply functioning like I was before the wedding, after I came down from getting my own back. I don't at all regret what I did, and I still feel satisfied that I got payback. I was making plans to take my own life about a month after the wedding. I hadn't told anyone for obvious reasons, but my mom, uncle, and cousin, same cousin whose wedding I ruined, came to me and told me they'd pay for a private counselor, since the mental health department of the NHS is under-equipped to say the least. I went to therapy, found a counselor who was very helpful, and he taught me a lot. I got diagnosed with PTSD, caused by the discovery of the affair. He's been a big help and has encouraged me to give casual dating a try, to build confidence in myself and get used to rejection as a normal part of life. I signed up to a few dating sites, although I'm avoiding Tinder like the plague. My counselor specifically suggested I stay as far away from Tinder as I possibly can. I've not been very successful in that avenue, but it's pretty much in line with what I was expecting. I've talked to a few people and even got a date scheduled, but she stood me up and ghosted me, which hurt. I'm doing good though, much better. I don't have self-harming thoughts very often anymore. Whenever I'm feeling especially crap, I like to open up this post and read your supportive messages. That's all for now. I'll probably start using this account on a more regular basis, so you may see more of me. I'm sorry for everything you're going through. I hope you know that you deserve to be loved, cared for, respected as a person, and that their actions are not a reflection of you as a person. P.S. And it's okay if you don't want to have a relationship with your cousin and your family members. Most stories on here that are related to OP ruining a wedding all have the same reaction from guests. Some support them and others don't, which is normal, but I feel as if your mother should have been way more supportive of her own child. I always hate reading stories like this. I'm sorry you had to go through such an ordeal. Makes me sick just thinking about if I ever went through something like that myself. You're incredibly strong for being able to keep it pushing for this long. Stay safe, man. So glad you're doing better. One day you will get to the point where when you think about this it will no longer hurt. I had to battle some demons after my ex and his countless infidelities. It takes time, but now when I think back on my ex, it's more of a sigh of relief that I didn't end up with him. God, that would have sucked. After a few first dates with a handful of guys, I stumbled upon someone when I wasn't even looking, and it all made sense. Yeah, it was miserable being heartbroken, but I finally found the reason none of the other guys worked out. I know you will find that one day when you least expect it and sending all the good karma your way. You will have to battle some demons, but it's good you have already started the adventure. I wish you the best of luck, and God, I love that you got to give that amazing speech to them to begin the actual healing process. Some of us don't get to have that kind of moment, and so glad you got that mic drop moment. If I was there, I'd be like, oh snap, that was epic. Kudos. Now for the last update. Hey friends, I'm still getting DMs asking for updates and the like, and honestly, I'm still baffled people care enough to ask. I do read your DMs. I've not responded to any because it's a little overwhelming. I've had over 70 people DM me now, all but 2 of whom were sending me messages of love and support. I really appreciate it, and I'm sorry for not responding. Like I said, it's just overwhelming. I might go through and respond someday. For now, I just open up my account and read the messages whenever I'm feeling down or generally just struggling to think positively. It really helps. Anyway, onto the update. Not a lot to update really. Not had much luck with the dating, so I gave up. I finally went on a date with 2 separate girls, but neither of them were my type, so I didn't arrange for a second date with either. The first constantly talked about her ex and how much of an a-hole he was. Obviously, I can relate pretty hard, but it just gave me the impression that she hadn't moved on from him. After we'd finished our date, I walked her home and she offered for me to come inside and watch a movie with her. I declined and lied, saying I needed to go home and feed my cat. I don't have a cat right now, and she seemed to buy it. I felt bad for turning her down, and I hope she finds someone who will treat her well. She seemed like a sweet girl, but she's just hung up on a toxic ex. The second girl was just painfully boring. She constantly talked about Love Island, I'm a celeb, and a few other shows I can't remember the name of. I faked an emergency just to get out of it, because 5 minutes with this woman felt like several decades. Other than that, no bites, and that's fine. My counselor said that if using those sites feels like a chore, then I should stop using them, and it felt like a chore, so I stopped. There's been quite a few common questions in my DMs, so I'll respond to them here. Question: how are you holding up? I'm doing great, all things considered. I have dark thoughts from time to time, but I've no intention to act on them. My counselor is a massive help. He's taught me a lot of coping mechanisms, and has helped boost my confidence from non-existent to probably a bit above average. Question: have you spoken with your ex at all since the wedding? Only when I've been to my cousin's house to visit with my mom, which is infrequent. I don't speak to either of them much. My mom just insists I visit him since he's paying for my therapy. I think she's trying to somehow repair our relationship, but once I'm well enough to not need therapy anymore, I'm going to go no contact with all of them and move to a different city. Question: continued from the previous question. If you do speak to your ex and or cousin, what do they say? Anything that isn't related to the wedding or doing each other in my bed. They do everything in their power to avoid talking about anything even tangentially related to those things. If you have additional questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll try to answer them if I see them. I hope OP is able to successfully heal, but I don't think having his cousin and ex back in his life this soon is the healthiest option. My guess is that the cousin will cut paying the therapy if he doesn't visit them. With a deal like that, he'll be in therapy forever. OP's mom still is in the dark. For Pete's sake, OP doesn't need to talk to cousin. Cousin messed up the relationship by sleeping with OP's girlfriend. Like seriously, the cousin paying for therapy is the least he could do for having doing that with the ex in OP's bed. OP doesn't need to speak with cousin after dealing with that, and basically being guilted into being the best man so they could look good. I wonder if the therapist knows about this arrangement. I wonder if the cousin fed the therapist a BS story before paying her, so that the therapy results in a favorable outcome for himself. Question: have you spoken with your ex at all since the wedding? Only when I've been to my cousin's house to visit with my mom, which is infrequent. I don't speak to either of them much. My mom just insists I visit him since he's paying for my therapy. I think she's trying to somehow repair our relationship. But once I'm well enough to not need therapy anymore, I'm going to go no contact with all of them and move to a different city. See, that's exactly why OP should get therapy elsewhere, and anyone else but from cousin paying, since his own mother is already using that info to force a relationship when there shouldn't be a relationship, nor conversation since the ex cheated on OP with the cousin. That is some insidious manipulation his own mother doing, and OP wouldn't be wrong to cut her out much sooner rather than later. I agree, but therapy is hella expensive. When I was going regularly a few years back, it was $50 a session with insurance, and I had to go once a week. The medication and gas money to and from appointments was an additional expense. I didn't have a lot of options for therapists, as I had to get someone who could do late sessions. Being a teacher, I couldn't take off work for weekly sessions, so trying to find someone who can do 5 p.m. or later appointments was tough. I could barely afford all this, but it was that or follow through with offing myself. I hope I don't get to that place anytime soon because I wouldn't be able to afford that now. So for the OP, he may not have a choice financially, except to have his cousin pay for it until he works through everything.